SIS Certifications is a leading global certification body offering management system certifications, training services to the organization to more than 50 plus countries. Headquartered in Gurgaon, India, SIS Certifications is committed in helping organizations enhance their credibility, improve operational efficiency, and demonstrate compliance with international standards. We are accredited by internationally recognized bodies from USA, that is IES and UF, which stands for International Accreditation Services and United Accreditation Foundation. We are also exemplar global certified for our training services. Our core services on which we work are ISO Management System certifications, for example ISO 9001, ISO 14001, ISO 45001, ISO 27001, ISO 22000, ISO 13485, ISO 37001 and many more other standards. We also provide training programs for lead auditor, for internal auditor, for lead implementer that is aligned with ISO standards. We also work with compliance and system audits. We support in third-party certifications. SIS Certifications serves a wide range of industries including manufacturing, construction, healthcare, food processing, hospitality, IT, education, logistics, finance and energy. It also supports sectors such as automotive, pharmaceutical, agriculture, real estate and environmental services along with professional services like consultancy, facility management and manpower supply. Government bodies like NGOs, telecommunication and e-commerce companies also rely on SIS certifications for ISO standards that enhances quality, safety, security and operational efficiency across global market. SIS certifications is built on a core value of integrity, impartiality, customer focus, emphasis honest, fair and reliable certifications services. They emphasize competency through continuous learning and enhances innovation to stay current. The company is accountable to protect the confidentiality of the customers and is committed to provide sustainable and responsible business practices. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Arunendra Dvivedi, the visionary founder and managing director of SIS Certifications Pvt Ltd, a global leader in ISO certification and training services. Arunendra Dvivedi is a founder and managing director of SIS Certifications Pvt Ltd, a globally recognized certification body providing ISO certifications and training services in over 50 countries. With the strong background of management system standards, business strategy and international accreditation, he has been instrumental in positioning SIS certifications as a trusted name in the field of ISO compliance. His leadership is driven the company's growth and across diverse sectors including government, corporate, healthcare, logistics and education.
So, very good afternoon to everyone. I welcome you to this training session for ISMS Information Security Management System Auditor oblique Lead Auditor Training course. This training is going to be conducted for 4 consecutive days: 20th, that is today, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of May 2025, from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Delhi. Just as an information, this training session is going to be recorded on Teams. As mentioned earlier, anyone who has got any different work to do or is not able to attend the training, this recorded session will be available to everyone, which can be referred even after the training. So let me start with ISMS, what exactly ISMS is. When we talk about ISMS Information Security Management System, ISO 27001, it basically provides standardized framework for the organizations to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve an information security management system. Its primary aim is to ensure that the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the information assets. Please note, it is an important term where we call it as information assets, manage risk effectively, and comply with legal and statutory requirements, and enhance trust within the stakeholders by demonstrating a commitment to information security. So, this standard is going to give you a framework where you will be able to imply the controls on all those areas where the information is stored, that is known as information assets. All the places where information is stored, that can be a physical asset, that can be a human, or that can be any other storing device where your information is stored. So the benefits of ISMS, basically it helps the organization to improve the posture of their security system, enhance the customer confidence, legal and statutory compliances are being taken care of. Of course, yes, cost saving, because if you are able to secure your information, okay, the cost of compliance is way lower as compared with the cost of non-compliance. It gives an organization competitive advantages and various other benefits which can be achieved by an organization who is into the information security management system structure. Now, when we talk about the standard basically is covering 10 clauses. It also comes into a high level structure, HLS, where the clauses starting from 1 to 10, okay, are available in this standard. The clause number 1, the clause number 2, and clause number 3. These clauses are non-auditable. They are just for the reference and for the terminologies, the terms and definitions. These are available in clause number 1, 2, and 3. The standard becomes auditable from clause number 4. Okay. Now, each standard, every management standard, if you see today, they are into a high level structure or the same structure starting from clause number 4 to 10. Okay, where clause number 4, 5, 6, 7, they come under act. Sorry, plan. Clause number 4, 5, 6, 7, they come under plan. The clause number 8, which talks about operations, they come into do. The clause number 9, which talks about internal audit, management review meetings, they come into check. And the improvement, the continual improvement, the monitoring, the measurement, and analysis basically comes into clause number 10, which says act. So plan, do, check, act, PDCA. So basically, if you look at the process, okay, when we perform an audit, as this is basically an auditing exercise, okay, the auditing of the internal system or to the system of any of the organization which is the third party. Okay. So when we talk about the benefits of ISMS, okay, so developing and implementing information security management system. That means a management system who is designed and developed, okay, for the to take care of the information which is stored in an organization. Okay, the digital security, okay, basically helps an organization to have a lot of benefits into the organization. Okay, few of them are improved security posture, enhanced customer confidence, legal and statutory compliances, regulatory compliances, cost savings, business continuity. Of course, when you talk about the business continuity, the risk assessment, when it comes to the risk assessment, or when it comes to the BCPs, okay, this standard comes into picture where the business continuity is also taken as one of the major area where you need to put a control. Okay, we will read about, we will study about business continuity when we talk about the controls which are there in the annexure A. The competitive advantages. Of course, an organization who follows a system, who knows how to implement the system, who knows the relevancy of a system. Okay, when they give a service, when they opt for any of the services in the market, okay, and when they have this 27,001 standard in place, okay, their confidence towards giving the services and the confidence of the customer towards the organization goes into another level. So it also gives a competitive advantage. PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, act. Any of the organization who is following any of the high level structured management system standard, ISO 9001, ISO 14001, ISO 45001, okay, any system if you talk about, okay, these standards are into high level structure where clause number 1 to 10 are mentioned. Clause number 1, clause number 2, clause number 3. These clauses are non auditable. The first clause gives the scope of the standard. The second clause gives the normative references. The third clause gives the terms and definitions. These are non-auditable. These are for the references to understand the standard and the terminologies which are used into the standard. The auditable means if an auditor goes into your organization, they will start auditing from the clause number 4. Clause number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, these are the clauses to be audited. Now, in earlier standards, the older standards, the structure was not in a way where a PDCA can be formed in a very straight and simple manner. Now, if you look at the new standard, new level of standards, the clause number 4, 5, 6, 7, they talk about plan. If you talk about clause number 8, it talks about do, which is the operations. So planning for management system standard, performing the management system, performing the documented or implementing the documented management system standard, okay, comes under the clause number 8, which says do. The internal audit and the management review meeting, where it is required that the complete management system standard is audited and all the gaps are being identified in the organization. These gaps, these improvements, they are discussed among the top management or the management who takes care of the management system standard, the relevant management system standard. Okay. They are being discussed and a minutes of meeting, where we called as agenda for meeting for this standard is defined in the standard. That of course, when we move ahead with the discussions in the next sessions, you will see that all these standard, all the agenda points as discussed in the standard needs to be discussed, and the minutes of meetings needs to be formed. Along with it, any of the outputs which are received out of this meeting need to be there. So it is basically checking the complete system. Okay. Then the gaps identified, the actions identified, okay, the areas that needs to be improved, they all are worked under clause number 10, that is act. And once there is an improvement in the system, once you close those gaps, then you again plan your system. Okay. You plan your system how to improve, how to implement the improved system, how to again check if the revised or the reviewed system is acting as per the requirement of the organization, okay, and again acting on it, on the gaps that you have identified. So this vicious circle goes ever, that is plan, do, check, act. Now, when we talk about auditing, so auditing is basically all about process. Okay. The process of audit is basically, if you look at the definition which is said, many organizations manage their operations via the application of a system of processes and their interactions, which can be referred as the process approach. Okay. So an organization will have multiple processes among themselves. Okay. And an efficient management system can be seen where we see the process interaction happens. Okay. So the system in which the process interacts, okay, it is basically known as a process approach. Okay. When you go for an audit or when you perform the internal audit of your organization, okay, you need to make sure that the process that you follow, okay, is basically concentrated on the interaction of the processes. All the processes can be good, but if you want the proper outcome of the system, each process should interact with each other. Okay, you should be having a document where you see from where the input is coming and from where the output is going. Okay, the input goes where and output goes where, to which processes. Now, when we talk about information security management system, information security management system ISO 27001 2022 version, okay, it says an ISMS is a systematic approach to managing sensitive company information so that it remains secure. It encompasses people, processes, and IT system. Okay. So this standard, it wants that any organization under any process, okay, they should follow the system to make sure that the information of the company, the sensitive information of the company, okay, it remains secure. Now, a differentiating between a sensitive and non-sensitive information cannot be done by an auditor or by an outsider. For example, the organizations like yours, State Bank of India, the organization like Max Life Insurance, okay, the organizations like Ordnance Factory, or any of the organization who includes the critical information, all the banks, the BFCs and NBFCs, if you talk about, okay, they have their each and every information that they have, every data that they have, it is very much sensitive if it goes to any of the third party. It can have a very major impact on the society, on the system. Okay. So a system needs to be, of course, needs to be well maintained, well developed, where the information that you have should be in place. And having this information security management system into place and making sure that the information remains safe, it can be done through the controls, through the 93 controls which is defined in this management system standard, which is referred in annexure A of the standard, okay, where the controls are divided into four parts: physical, organizational, technological controls, where you see that yes, the controls are defined and you need to implement those controls. The people, the processes, and the IT systems that you use, these all three things needs to be well bounded with each other. So as mentioned earlier, plan, it is basically establishment of the ISMS frameworks, define objectives and assess risk. So when we talk about plans, so we need to frame the ISMS framework, the objectives need to be defined and the risk need to be documented so that the organization, the system can work in the framework to achieve the objectives, making sure that the risks that have been identified in the system, okay, they are well addressed. Do is implement and operate the ISMS. Check, monitor and review the ISMS through audits and assessments. Act. Continually improve the ISMS based on evaluation, results and changing business needs. So, this management system standard, ISO 27001, this system can be integrated with any other management system. Because this standard, if you see, it is basically, yes, earlier it was known to be well available, well suited, and well applicable to all the IT industries. But now, if you look at the scenario about in the information, increasing the way the digital information is going into the market, okay, any organization, any industry can opt for this standard. Okay. Of course, manufacturing industries, they can also opt. We have received number of queries and we are working on a lot of organizations who are not into IT. Food industry, the manufacturing industry, automobile industry. Okay, all these industries are also going for, and various, and of course, yes, a lot of other industries, they are going for 27,001. And if you see these industries, they can also go for 9,001, they can go for 22301, they can go for 14,001, 45,001, 22,000. Okay, this standard basically talks about the information, the securing of your information. Okay. So an organization who is managing a good business, a good quality management system for with 9001, a good BCP through a good ISO 22301 business continuity management system, or through any of the other standard, okay, all these standards can be clubbed together. They can be integrated with each other. Now, when we talk about integrating ISO 27001, it can be integrated with ISO 9001, 14001, 45001, 22301, 37001, 41001, and a lot many standards. So, as spoken, the applicability of the standard is applicable to all the types of organization. I'll just go through it. I'll read it. ISO 27001 is applicable to all types of organizations, regardless of size or industry, that need to manage and protect their information assets. ISO 27001 provides a robust framework for organizations to protect their information assets and manage associated risks effectively. By implementing an ISMS based ISO 27001, organizations can enhance their resilience to information security threats and demonstrate their commitment to safeguarding sensitive information. Sensitive information threats, the security threats, if you look at today's digital world, okay, the digital world, with the increase in digital world, the valorization, the vulnerability has also gone to its peak. Any organization can opt for any of the IT service. Most of the organizations now keep their data on the cloud. These clouds are nothing but the dedicated space. Okay, they manage their information flow with the help of these cloud spaces. And when it has gone to the cloud, that means it has gone outside your organization. And control of your system, control of the cloud service, okay, has to be taken care in terms of information security. Now let us talk about few terminologies which are used in the standard ISO 27001. Access control. Ensure asset access is restricted to authorized users based on business and security needs. The access to any of the application, the access to any of the information, the access to information to any of the data, okay, it needs to be controlled. What is an attack? An attack is an attempt to harm, expose, alter, disable, steal, or misuse an asset without authorization. Okay. If any of the person in the organization who is not given the authorization to access any of the information, and still if that person is trying to to use it, okay, or perform any action on it, it can be called as attack. Attack basically today, in today's world, it can be minimized, it can be taken care of through vulnerability assessments and penetration tests, where we see that what are the gaps that we have on a system, where from where the information can be leaked out. This is basically the through the IT assets. Audit. What is an audit? A systematic, independent process for collecting and evaluating evidence to assess if audit criteria are met. Independent. Okay. A person who is doing some X process, okay, cannot be involved into the auditing for his own process. It is basically called as the dependent audit. Okay. Conflict of interest, where a person will never find a mistake in what he does. Or you can say the maker and checker cannot be same. What is the audit scope? It is the extent and boundary of an audit. If in an organization they have multiple departments, for example, the banks, okay, for example, the manufacturing, okay, so they will have a lot of different departments where these departments will get the certification individually. Now, in this type of audit, the scope that we'll have to define will be basically for that department. We will not have to audit. If we are getting the audit for HR, we'll have to stay into the boundary of HR. We'll not move into the boundary of any other uh, 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 department. So we'll have to always have boundaries for the audit and extent. Of course, when we are auditing ISO 27001, we are not into the area where we can audit the 22301 or 20000-1 or 9001. We need to make sure that what is the extent that we need to audit, that it remains into the boundary of ISO 27001. Authentication, it is a provision of assurance that a claimed characteristic of an entity is correct. What is an authenticity? Property that an entity is what it claims to be. Okay, you say the entity, okay, you claim this is the information, okay, so it should be authenticated. Availability, the availability of the property is available to the people where they require it, okay, which should be authorized. Okay, so property of being accessible and usable on demand by an authorized entity. Base measure, an attribute and method for quantifying. For example, when you talk about objectives, they should have a base measure. They should have a method for quantifying. Competence, it is an ability to apply knowledge and skills to achieve intended results. Confidentiality, ensure information is not disclosed to the unauthorized parties. Conformity, fulfillment of a requirement. Okay, any requirement which is raised by the standard, which is raised by the customer, or which is raised internally, okay, that should be conforming. The process that happens needs to be conformed. Consequence, if there is any event which is affecting the objectives, okay, then what is the result of it? What is the outcome of it? So that is known as the consequences. The continual improvement, it is basically the recurring activity to enhance performance. What is in control? So measure that is modifying risk. Control is not about it is going to reduce risk. It is going to modify also. Okay. So reduction or modifying, it can be done when you put some control. Control objectives, a statement outlining the expected outcomes of implementing controls. So control objective is basically when you implement some control, you get some outcome. So that is control objective. Correction, action to eliminate a detected non-conformity. Corrective action, action to eliminate the cause of a non-conformity and to prevent reoccurrence. Derived measure, function of two or more values of base measures. Documented information, okay, and information which an organization has to control and maintain, and its storage medium should be defined. That is basically known as the documented information. Effectiveness, the degree to which planned activities are completed and objectives are met. What is an event? As we discussed, occurrence or change of a particular set of circumstances. What is an external context? The external environment in which the organization seeks to achieve its objectives. The external environment. So there are always two parts. One is internal context and one is external context. With the help of internal context, the changes in the organization, the achievement of the objectives or achievement of any of the implementation of the controls, okay, if it is done through internal resources, it is known as it is done into internal environment. But when we talk about external, which is not in your control, internal is always controlled, and external may not be in your control. So that environment in which you want to achieve the objectives is basically known as the external control. Governance of information security, system by which an organization's information security activities are directed and controlled. So there will always be a governing body. That governing body is responsible to make sure that the information system implemented in the organization are properly directed. Direction means in line with the requirements of the standard and controlled. We have this, the governing body, the person or group responsible for the organization's performance and compliance. Indicator, so measure that provides an estimate or evaluation. Information need, insight necessary to manage objectives, goals, risks, and problems. These are the information which we require to make sure we can implement the system. Information processing facilities, any information processing system, service or infrastructure or the physical location housing it. Means any of the infrastructure that can be a service or that can be a physical location where the information is put, where the information is stored. That is known as the information processing facility. Information security, preservation of confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. Information security continuity, processes and procedures for ensuring continued information security operation. So information security basically is preservation of three pillars: the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the information. The information security continuity, making sure that the information security that you have developed, to make sure that these three elements are in process, they are kept bounded. Okay, the process to make sure that this happens is basically known as the information security continuity. The information security event, a detected incident indicating a potential breach or failure related to security policies or controls. Information security incident, an a significant security event or series of events that likely threaten businesses, operations, and information security. So, information security incident is if there is any event or a series of events, one or multiple times, a hit is done once or a hit is done continuously, okay, which can have an impact on the business operations and the information security. We need to take care of both the things, the business operations as well as the information security. Okay. Maybe if there is a event, it may not have an impact on the information security, but yes, it can have an impact on the business operations. Maybe it will not have the impact on the business operations, but yes, it can have the impact on the information security. So both the things needs to be taken care of. This is the reason in your new standard 2022 version, the focus on business continuity practices (BCP) is taken care of. The business continuity plan, the BIA, business impact assessment, has been done mandatory for 22 version. Information security incident management. Basically, it is in preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication and recovery, and post-incident recovery. So you prepare your system to make sure that the information is secure. You try to detect and analyze. Of course, yes, if you have a system, if there is an information flow and in this vulnerable area, okay, in this vulnerable environment, there will be some or the other threats, there will be some or the other hits which will happen in your system. So we need to detect and analyze these events. If there is any detection, then and if there is any impact on the system, we need to make sure that the recovery is done, the eradication is done. And once that is done, then we need to see what we need to do post incident. Once the incident has happened, we have recovered the things, everything is done. Now, what action we need to take if to make sure that this problem doesn't happen again? So that comes into post incident activity. Information security management system professionals, who are ISMS professionals, the person who develops, manages, and enhances information security management processes. So these are known as ISMS professionals. For example, the auditors, the people who are involved into the development, review of the standards, the people who are developing the system in the organization, the consultants. Okay. All these people are known as professionals, the technical experts. Maybe not complete as per the requirement 27001, but an area where when we talk about technological controls, if a person is very well and he understands what are technological controls and how it needs to be implemented and documented in a system, that person can be taken into the profession. But the person should be working in cybersecurity, the information security, the data protection, data management, information management, information sharing community. So a group of organizations, they collaborate with each other and they say, okay, we shall be sharing a set of information with each other. This set of information should not have any sensitive information. What it can contain is basically the learnings from any of the attacks, the learnings that you have got through the gap analysis, what you get from your internal audits, what happens into the industry. These information, which normally is also available on the public areas. Okay. So some of the organizations have gone to, they document a proper booklet, a proper yearly booklet where all those scenarios that happened in their organization or they have encountered anywhere, they mention those without having any set of information, without having any set of sensitive information. Okay. And this book is circulated to all the relevant interested parties. This can also be done through various means. So we have information system, the set of applications, services, information technology assets, or other information handling components. So information system comprises of all the applications, everything, all the other information. So all these assets, all these services or application where the information system remains. So that is known as information system. Integrity, the property of accuracy and completeness. Interested party or stakeholders. Interested party are those people who can have an impact from your working or you can have an impact from their working. These interested parties can be internal, these interested party can be external. They are also known as stakeholders. So a person or organization that can be affected by or perceive itself to be affected by a decision or activity. So we have internal context, internal environment. We discussed the external context. Okay, so we have internal context. Internal environment in which the organization seeks to achieve its objectives. So the internal environment inside the environment, inside the organization, where it is into our control. The level of risk, the magnitude of our risk expressed in terms of combination of sequences and its likelihood. What is the likelihood? The chance of something happening. Management system, a system of elements in an organization to establish and achieve policies, objectives, and processes. Measure. So it is basically a variable to which a value is assigned as a result of measurement. So this value can be different. The variable can be different. But if a value is given to a variable, for example, the number of complaints, the number of attacks, okay, the level of attack. So this is basically a variable which can go up and down. But if a value is given, it becomes measurable. What is a measurement? It is a process to determine a value. How do you determine the process? Okay. So if you want to have anything which can be measured, okay. So when you talk about objectives, so in objectives you will find that it says the objectives should be measurable. Means you should not have any vague objectives where we don't find it to be measurable. The measurement function, algorithm or calculation performed to combine two or more base measures. Measurement method, logical sequence of operations described generally used in quantifying an attribute with respect to a specified scale. What is a monitoring? Determining the status of a system, a process, or an activity. What is the status of the process which is going on? Okay. What is the process? What is the current situation of the attack which has happened? So we need to continually monitor to make sure that the process which is moving towards the improvement. The non-conformity. Any requirement which is raised by the standard or by the legal requirement or from the customer's requirement which has been accepted by the organization, if those requests, if those requirements are not fulfilled, it is known as a non-conformity. Non-repudiation, the ability to prove the occurrence of a claimed event or action and its originating entities. We should be able to claim that yes, the process, the activity that has occurred, okay, we should know the event and where exactly it has originated. Okay. What are the objectives? The results which are to be achieved are known as objectives. What is an organization? A person or group with defined functions, responsibilities, and authority to achieve its objectives. What is an outsource? Outsource a function or processes to an external organization. If an organization has to do 10 processes, has to pass through 10 processes, okay, and some of the processes, one or more of the processes is given to the third party, okay, where the operations are done, the output is received, and that output from that organization is used as an input, okay, it is known as the outsourcing of the activity. When we move ahead with the standard, you will see that it is required to make sure that the processes which are outsourced are also controlled. So it is known as control of outsourced processes. What is a performance? It is the measurable result. What is the policy? The intention and direction of an organization as formally expressed by its top management. By the top management. So top management is the one who needs to define the policy, who needs to review and make sure that the policy that is being documented is also being implemented with the help of the objectives. What is a process? So process, if you see, is basically an input with input specifications, the activities and sub processes that happen in the with the inputs that we receive and the output that has been received. So input going through a process, giving an output is a process. Reliability, the property of consistent intended behavior and results. That is reliability. When you rely on someone, okay, so it is basically the consistently what has been happening, the trend which you have been saying, depending on that, the reliability can be measured. What is a requirement? Need or expectation that is stated, generally implied, or obligatory. Need or expectation, a requirement. So, need is always written. An expectation is not mandatory to be mentioned in the documentation. For example, we as a customer, as an end customer, okay, from a bank, okay, we want that our information, our data should be safe and secure. We don't sign an agreement. You, of course, the bank when it signs, it says yes, you have kept your money, okay, but it nowhere says that the breach cannot happen, the scam cannot happen. Okay. But it is the expectation of the customer to have the security of what is being kept at bank. Residual risk, the risk remaining after risk treatment. So once you have done the risk assessment, you get some risk. Okay. Those risks are basically taken care with the help of the control or accepted risk or mitigation. These are the three things which can happen. We can control the risk. We can put some controls where we can reduce the risk level. There are some risks which need to be accepted. Okay. There are some risks which can be terminated. Okay. So any risk, any portion of the risk which is left after the treatment is known as the residual risk. Okay. So you can see the picture. So it's a funnel. So you apply the risks are coming, and once what is left is residual risk. Review, assessing the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the subject matter to meet objectives. Review objective, specific item being reviewed, an object or a process or a system. If it is being reviewed, okay, we call it as review objective. That process, that system. Review objective, why it needs to be reviewed. Statement describing what is to be achieved as a result of a review. Why you want to review? What do you want it? What is the output that you want? What is a risk? It is an effect of uncertainty and objectives. Risk acceptance, informed a decision to take a particular risk. Okay. You are placing your system, okay, you are placing your information in an asset. Okay. And if there is a fluctuation, if you are keeping into a hard drive, okay, if the hard drive is not properly stored, okay, it can have a problem. So of course you can store it. But when you talk about, if you say that yes, there is a risk of getting hacked, okay, so you okay, so that risk is accepted based on the control that you put. Moving in a car, if you move in a car in on the roads, okay, it can, you can face the accident. Okay. So this is an accepted risk. You will not say, okay, I will not go on the road now. Risk analysis, process to comprehend the nature of risk and determine the level of risk. Risk assessment, it is basically the hazard identification, hazard characterization, exposure assessment, and risk characterization. So you need to identify all the elements which can create a risk, the what type of risk it is, how much impact it can happen, it can create, okay, and what is the category of the risk. These things needs to be done in a risk assessment. Risk communication and consultation, ongoing process for sharing information and engaging with stakeholders about risk management. Risk criteria, you need to define the risk criteria against which the evaluation is done. Terms of reference against which the reference of risk is evaluated. Risk evaluation, comparing risk analysis results with the criteria to assess if the risk is acceptable or tolerable. You define a chart, okay, where you say, okay, up to this level the risk is accepted, after this level the risk is not acceptable. You define a threshold value, okay, and based on that you compare and you say it is acceptable or not acceptable. Risk identification, the process of finding, recognizing and describing risk. What kind of risk it is, okay, how do you find the risk, how you recognize that yes, it is a risk. So that is known as risk identification. Risk management, a coordinated activities to direct and control an organization about risk. Risk management process, systematic application of policies and procedure to manage and review risk activities. The policies, the procedures that have been laid down, okay, if they are being properly systematically applied into the system, okay, you will see that the risks can be managed and review can be done on the activities. So if you see, there is a risk management life cycle: risk identification, risk analysis, risk mitigation planning, risk management implementation, review and tracking. Who is a risk owner? A person or entity with the accountability and authority to manage a risk. If someone is given the responsibility, okay, of storing or someone has given the access or an authority to access any of the information, okay, that entity, that organization or that person is known as the risk owner. Risk treatment, okay, it is a process basically to modify the risk. Okay, you can retain the risk, you can avoid it, you can transfer it. Transfer in the sense, when we talk about the insurance, okay, when you have an insurance for your organization where you mention that any information if lost, this would be the amount, this is the impact that is going to happen, and you take an insurance for that risk. So you have transferred the risk to the insurance company, where you say, okay, if this risk happened, this is going to be the problem, this is going to be the consequences in the business, or this is the amount that is going to be lost. Okay, and if this happens, I have an insurance, and this risk is transferred to the insurance. You can reduce the risk by having some controls on it, or you can exploit it. Security implementation standard, document specifying authorized ways for realizing security. Security implementation standard. So for every standard, there is always a next standard which talks about how we can implement the standard. For example, when you talk about 27001, And when you talk about controls, okay, so controls 93 controls, there's another standard which is ISO 27002, which talks about how to implement the controls in the organization. It only talks about controls. So these type of standards are known as security implementation standard. What is a threat? A potential cause of an accident, a potential cause of an incident that could harm a system or the organization. Okay. It is basically not an event. Okay. It is a cause which can lead to the event. A potential cause. Okay. If you don't lock your system, it can create an incident or an event. So that this is a threat. Okay. Where if you don't lock, that is a threat. A potential cause. Who is a top management? A person or group of people who directs and controls an organization at the highest level. Trusted information communication entity. So basically, when we talk about the client, server, and trusted entity, a client sends a request. For example, it says, "Can I do it?" through a server. The trusted entity will send the answer and the server will respond. So this is trusted information communication entity. Vulnerability. What is a vulnerability? Weakness of an asset or control. Okay. The asset which is put, okay, the asset can be weakness, or the control which is put, that is also a weakness. For example, when we talk about capacity management, so capacity management normally it is known to be the management of the or the inputs that is given to a process. Okay. Or when you talk about a computer, when you talk about a system, okay, what RAM should be there, the hard disk that should be there, the the other inputs that is given to a computer. Okay. If that is changed, okay, so it can be vulnerability. Okay, because if you are changing the capacity, if you are changing the capacity without making sure that what effect it can have on the information that is stored in the asset, okay, it can become a vulnerable. Okay. So the weakness of that asset or the control which is applied, that can be exploited by one or more threats. So these basically were the terminologies that will be used in the standard. Okay. Multiple times when you read the standard, when you go through the training, you will see that these are the areas where you will find, yes, these terminologies can be used. Now, when we talk about context of the organization, so context of the organization means understanding the organization. The organization in which you are going to implement the system, the information security management system, or any other standard. As we earlier spoke, all these standards of the management system standard, basically when you talk, okay, every standard is into the high level structure. Okay, clause number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, where clause number 4 always talks about the context of the organization. So context of the organization basically is understanding the organization. What can be the risks? What is the boundary under which the certification needs to be taken care of? What is the boundary under which the implementation needs to be done? What are the interested parties? What are their issues? What are their needs and expectations? All these things needs to be identified before you move ahead with the documentation of the system. So it is basically the first part of the plan. The first part of the plan where it says understand your organization, understand what it can impact, understand the scope, understand the boundary. So the first thing that it asks is understanding the organization and its context. The organization shall determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose. and that affect its ability to achieve the intended outcome of its information security management system. Now, when you are implementing the information security management system, when we talk like all these standards have the same structure, the same requirements, you will see the same standards, clause number 4 as the context of organization in any of the high level structure standard. Okay. So does that mean every implemented standard will have the same context? No. When we talk about the context of the organization or understanding the organization, we always talk in terms of its context. Okay. Context means ISO 27001, Information Security Management System, Cyber Security, okay, Private Information Security. The latest standard ISO 27001 2022 talks about all these three things: information security, cyber security, data security. Okay. In earlier standard, okay, the private information, the data was not being taken care of. Okay. What is an information? What is a data? So data, when combined together, it forms an information. If someone tells, okay, what is your name? Or you say, my name is Arun. Okay. This is a data. But if you get all the data related to myself, you will be able to have an information where you will be able to say that Arunendra Dvivedi, he has his account in this bank with this account number, with this identification, okay, with this Aadhaar number. So all these, if you keep them separately, it is data. But when you combine this data, it becomes information. Alone the Aadhaar card, or alone the account number, or alone the name will not have any impact. This is the same, in the same way, we have to understand that the data, the information in an organization will vary. The relevancy of the information, the impact of the event, okay, or the information that is being used in the organization under the boundary will depend on the type and size of the organization. So we need to understand, of course, yes, the system that is going to be developed, the region, okay, the system, the requirement that is there in India doesn't need to be the same in Mongolia, doesn't need to be same in Saudi. But yes, the basic requirement of having the ISMS is to make sure that the system that is implemented in any of the region, okay, remains under one roof. The controls that are put, they are same. Of course, the legal and statutory requirement that is there that needs to be followed, but the controls, the identification of the risk, the events, the probability, okay, all these needs to be taken care of with the help of this International Management System Standard, ISMS. So, the organization shall determine internal and external issues. What are issues? Issues are basically those areas from where you can have the vulnerabilities. Okay. Or issues can be those areas, okay, where you can see that yes, it can have an impact on complying with the requirements of the standard, legal requirements, customer requirements. Okay. One department, internal, you can see department wise. Internal, you can see process wise. If this department doesn't work properly, the next department is not going to have a proper system. An organization where the SOC is centralized, okay, the security operational control is centralized. Okay. So if that is not working properly, it is going to have an impact on all the other parameters, on all the other entities. Entities means the internal departments, okay, with respect to the information security. So these can be considered as the internal issues. Now, what are external issues? External issues are those issues which can impact an organization if those things are modified. For example, the change in the legal requirements, the change in the statutory requirements, the introduction of new laws, the modification of new laws, the change of the state government policy, the change in the policies of the central government, or any of such activities which are not under your control and they are being controlled by the external authorities, these controls have to be taken care of. Okay. So we have to identify all the internal controls that can, internal issues that can happen in an organization, and all the issues that can happen from the external parties. Now, these parties, when we talk about the interested parties, okay, so interested parties can be external, interested parties can be internal. Understanding the needs and expectations and other interested parties. So, when you talk about the needs and expectations, every organization, in respect to the standard that they are following, okay, they have to identify the internal and external party, the needs and expectations of whose needs and expectations, the internal and external parties. So we have to identify all the relevant, please note, all the relevant interested parties who are directly or indirectly dependent or can have an impact on the system that is being followed by the organization. The information that is being stored, or the information that is being passed, or the information that is being received by an organization, okay, all those areas from where this can happen or the security incident can happen needs to be taken under the consideration of the needs, the internal and external parties. So internal parties can be the internal stakeholders, the department owners, the asset owners. These all are the interested parties, internal interested party. External can be legal and statutory requirement. Internal and external parties, okay, which can have an impact. We need to define the needs and expectations of all these interested parties. So, for the internal, of course, the organization will have to identify what are the needs of the internal people, what expectations do they have, what expectations or what needs do the suppliers have, what are the needs and expectations of the customer, what are the needs and expectations of the of the legal and statutory bodies, the regulatory bodies, okay, the internal needs and expectations. So these needs and expectations needs to be identified and needs to be worked upon. So if you see, the organization shall determine, what shall they shall determine? First A, the interested parties that are relevant to the information security management system. The relevant requirements of these interested parties. Which of these requirements will be addressed through the information security management system? We need to figure out what all can be taken care through the ISMS. The requirements of interested parties can include legal and statutory requirements and contractual obligations. Of course, if you have a customer, if you have cross-border relations, okay. So if you want to go for a cross-border relations, of course, there you will have some contractual obligations, because the laws that needs to be followed will be according to the local authority, according to the local laws. Okay. So that needs to be taken care of. Determining the scope of information security management system. The organization defines the boundaries and applicability of its information security management system to establish its scope. Yes. So, determining the scope of the information security management system. This means you need to define the scope. Defining the scope means the boundary of the organization, the boundary into which this information security management system as 27001 will be implemented, will be documented. So we need to make sure that whenever we consider the scope of the certification, the external and internal issues needs to be taken into consideration. Okay. The activities which are conducted internally and those involving external organization means the outsourced processes. The scope of ISMS is documented and made available as a documented information. This has to be documented in your manual or anywhere where you mention that yes, this is the scope of boundary, this is the boundary into which we are going to implement and document our management system. This documentation will help the organization, the auditor, to ensure the clarity and alignment across the organization. If there is anything else that you are going to include into your scope that is not going to help you out into the documentations. Information security management system. The organization shall establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve an information security management system, including the processes needed and their interaction in accordance with the requirements of this standard, of this document. So, whenever you are implementing a documented system in your organization according to the requirements, when this standard is considered, it talks about moving around this standard. Anything which you do for the certification, for the implementation, has to be in respect with the Information Security Management System Standard ISO 27001. The interaction of the processes. Okay. The processes, as we mentioned, needs to interact with each other. One process will have an output. That output will be used by the other process as an input. And this is going to revolve around the things. So, a good system, a strong system, okay, can be achieved if their processes are interacting with each other. The information flow can be easily documented, the information flow can be easily identified if you have this interaction of the processes. So this was basically the clause number 4. Clause number 4, the context of the organization, which basically talks about the internal and external issues, identification of the internal and external parties, the identification of the scope, the identification of having a proper documented management system which aligns with the requirement of this standard. Leadership. Leadership is basically for the control and making sure that the people in the organization, they are given their set of tasks through the roles, responsibilities, and authorities. So when we talk about leadership and commitment, of course, there has to be a top management which will decide on the policies, which will decide on the objectives that needs to be taken care of. Top management, they demonstrate the leadership and commitment to the ISMS by aligning security policies with strategic goals, integrating ISMS requirements into processes, ensuring resource availability, emphasizing compliance, achieving ISMS objectives, supporting staff, promoting continual improvement, and encouraging leadership across roles. It's not just that the top management is going to demonstrate the leadership. Okay. Demonstrating the leadership means each process owner will have to get into a role, and that role will have to be played within the leadership area. Okay. Where every process owner, every asset owner, every information owner, they will have to act in a way where they act as a leader for taking care of their information security, of the information that they have. What is an information security policy? Top management is responsible for establishing an information security policy that aligns within the organization's objectives. This policy shall include the information security objectives or provide a framework for defining them. So, security policy is basically defined within the purview of the standard. Okay. It is basically a commitment to meet applicable information security requirements, a pledge to continually improve the information security management system. The policy shall be documented and accessible, effectively communicated throughout the organization and made available to all the relevant interested parties. When we talk about continually improve the information security management system, this is done through objectives. The objectives that are framed should be in line with the security policy. It needs to have all the elements which you put in the policy. Okay. It has to be in alliance with the risks that are being identified in the organization, the organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities. So any organization, okay, they will always have a proper role and responsibility. Okay. So responsibility is required to be given in the organization where they want their processes relevant to the information security management system. Of course, for any other management system, if you go, you will find the same roles, responsibilities, and authorities. Okay. However, the role has to be given. Who is CISO? Who is Deputy CISO? Okay. Who is going to take care of the VAPTs? Who is going to take care of the processes? So roles are defined. Responsibility within the process. Okay, there can be multiple controls which will be put to make sure that the information security is maintained. The information doesn't go out. The information doesn't go to any of the unintended user. The responsibility to make sure that the controls are in place and are properly reviewed and monitored needs to be taken care by the person. The authority basically is to take a decision. If some control is not working properly, the process owner or any of the identified person or the role should be given the authority to take a decision to make sure that the controls are back put into the picture. Or if there is an event, if there is a risk, if there is an attack, there should be people, there should be roles who should be authorized to take the instant decisions. What decision needs to be taken? What action needs to be taken now? Okay. And the signature on the document needs to be done to make sure that the decisions that are taken are being maintained and are being followed by the other people. So we are going to stop here today. Okay. So this is basically the two clauses that we have. We could have started the clause number, next clause number, which was basically the planning. Okay. But that needs a bit of time. That needs a thorough explanation. Okay. That we will be doing tomorrow. So thank you so much for today. If there are any questions, you can please put up your questions for today.